everybody. A warm welcome to Amazing You podcast and YouTube channels, and a big thank you to all the viewers for watching, sharing, and subscribing. So this is the channel where stories of resilience, triumph, and unwavering hope come to life. And in each episode, we dive into the inspiring journey of individuals who have faced the toughest challenges heads-on and emerged victorious. And our aim is to be a beacon of inspiration, offering a guiding light to those navigating through difficult times. And whether you are dealing with health challenges, professional setbacks, or personal struggles, this channel is dedicated to uplifting your spirit and showing you that even in the darkest moments, there is a path to hope and triumph. So join us as we dive into these great stories, reminding you that resilience is a force within us all. So be prepared, everybody, to be inspired and find the strength to navigate life's challenges. So this is Amazing You channel, where hope takes center stage. I am your host. My name is Dr. Rani Thanacoody. I am a certified clinical hypnotherapist using rapid transformational therapy method. I am a Mars Venus life and relationship coach, breathwork coach, tarot reader, astrologer, and life force compassion practitioner. And today, I have the great pleasure to introduce you to a very special guest. Her name is Phyllis Leavitt. She is a psychotherapist and author. And Phyllis has a master's degree in psychology and counseling from Antioch University. She co-directed the Parents United Sexual Abuse Treatment in Santa Fe, New Mexico for 2 years. And then she went into private practice full-time. Phyllis has treated children, families, couples, and individual adults for 34 years. And she has worked extensively with abuse and dysfunctional family dynamics and their aftermath and some of the most important elements for healing. Phyllis has published 3 books, A Light in the Darkness and Into the Fire, and her latest book is called America in Therapy, a new approach to hope and healing for a nation in crisis. Very warm welcome to Amazing You, Phyllis.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. It's really an honor and a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much for taking your time, Phyllis. You know, I must tell you, it is the first time that I have a psychotherapist on the podcast. So I am really, really excited. You have so much knowledge and wisdom to share with us. So I'm really looking forward to talking to you, sharing with the audience, Phyllis.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate that. And I feel like there's no better time to talk about therapy for America than now.
Yes, absolutely. So can you share with us, Phyllis, about your journey, about your story briefly?
Sure. Yeah. I got into this field because I ended up in therapy myself when I was in my mid-30s. And I was at a very, very dark time in my life. I had 3 little children. I was in a very unhappy, dysfunctional marriage. And I was so shut down and so lost and not knowing where to go and feeling like I had so much love inside of me and so much that wanted to be expressed that I couldn't find an avenue for. And because I think I learned to shut down as a little kid in response to abuse early on in my life. And it was almost like my voice was blocked right here in my throat and couldn't come out. And at that time, when I was in my mid-30s, a number of my friends were starting to seek counseling. And I was at such a place in my life that even though I had grown up with no understanding of psychology whatsoever, nobody I knew went to therapy. I think
Mhm.
there was still a lot of stigma around it in terms of like, you shouldn't need therapy. It's a sign of weakness. You should be able
Mhm.
to figure this out yourself. You shouldn't show the world that you have any pain or things aren't working well in your life. You have to look good.
Mhm.
Um, but I was at such a low point that I think I was willing to confront all that and ask for help. And I went to therapy. And the first time I went to therapy, I had no idea that my childhood had any influence on my life. And not only that, but I didn't remember most of what had happened to me. So um, it was a big light bulb went off. I left that first session. I went to the library. At that time, people didn't have the internet to, Google things. I took out books on psychology and I began to read right away that our early conditioning has everything to do with how we feel about ourselves and the coping mechanisms that we employ, the places where we're blocked, and the role models that we have internalized for men and women, for conflict, for success, for how do you deal in life. And out of that, began a long healing journey for me where I had to, not had to, but I did begin to remember what had happened to me. And I want to emphasize that here just really quickly, because I think if we really don't know what conditioned us, what happened for better or for worse, and of course people come to therapy for the worse,
Yes.
um, then it's really hard to heal. If you don't know that it's your liver that's ailing, it's hard to heal your body if you're sick. And it's the same with our psyches. If you don't know what happened that caused you to feel depressed or feel worthless or feel unlovable or feel angry, then it's really hard to heal that. And so that opened up a whole new world for me. And out of that, I became a therapist myself. And um, that's where I'll stop for now.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Phyllis. I think that's very helpful to understand how your journey started, because I know there are so many people watching or listening to us today who have those stigma, because we live in cultures that we are not when we go and look for help, mostly for therapy, we are seen as weak, so I'm really glad that you mentioned that seeking therapy, it's not a sign of weakness, but
At
it's a
all.
sign of strength.
Absolutely. And it takes courage and it does
Yes.
take strength to be fearless in terms of looking both at what happened to us that might have had a negative impact, but also most of us have done things that we're not so proud of or that we would do differently today. And it takes great courage to look those things in the face, and really be accountable for, I could have handled that relationship better. I wish I hadn't said that to so and so. I wish I had more understanding of how to parent my children when I got a divorce. I do actually do really wish that I knew what I did. And there's a certain level of freedom, not only in remembering what happened to you that hurt you, but in being accountable now to make changes, to do it differently, and to not feel shame and blame of yourself about that, but to just really own it. Because that's what we want from other people, right? We want them to be able to say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. So we have to be those people ourselves.
Yes, that's very true. And how has your life, because when we go through this kind of transformation of healing, we become a different person. Can you share with us how that older version of Phyllis was, what were her coping mechanism, and how she transformed all that and changed all the beliefs to be the person that she is today?
Yeah, that's a fabulous question. And I want to just start it by saying that one of the things I did really early on before I ever went to therapy, I mean, I think I knew something was really wrong inside myself. I was blaming myself for it, but I knew something was really wrong. And I would read all kinds of autobiographies and biographies of people who had made that transformation, who had come from tragedy or abuse or some kind of trauma and managed to not only survive, but to heal. And that inspired me. And so that's one of the reasons why I think your show is so valuable, because I think we need those stories from other people to light the way and to show us that there really is hope. So I think my unconscious sort of led me to that to begin with. And then some of the things that really helped me along the way, certainly remembering what happened to me was a big one. But I had always wanted to be a writer, even when I was a little kid, and I had started writing poetry when I was really young. And so I kept journals, and I really went deeply inside myself. And I would say that for the most part, whether it was by nature or by nurture or both, I tended to be an introvert and kind of a loner, not totally, but that was sort of my place of refuge, was to go within rather than to reach out to other people. And I think one of the things I learned along the way was to reach out to other people. And because when you're alone, all you have is your own thoughts. And if you don't have good thoughts or helpful thoughts or healing thoughts or positive thoughts, you're stuck with what you've already ingested and come up with. So I think one of the things was to really realize that I needed other people, and that was a very vulnerable place to be. The other things that I did that were, or the things that changed, I would say, I think that was part of your question, as a result of doing very intensive healing work for a number of years, actually, was that I was able to leave my marriage. I did my best to try to make it work. And when I couldn't make that happen, I found the strength to leave. And before I did therapy, I did not have the strength to leave that relationship. So that was huge. And I developed my career, and I started to make really healthy friends, and be a little more, a more powerful parent. I was a single parent for the most part. And then I was able to marry someone who was really a great partner. And so these are some huge things. And then I guess the other big thing that really, really was huge in my life was that I began to write my story in the first two books that I wrote, A Light in the Darkness and Into the Fire. And that's really an accounting of my healing journey, those two books, and my great good fortune, which I really believe is possible for us, not just me, that I really felt like I made a connection to my most essential self that had been buried and trying to come to the surface and trying to have a voice and trying to express itself and trying to connect with me in my heart. I feel like I made that connection, and it was life-changing, absolutely life-changing. So I can't say enough about the value of really taking that deep dive and being willing to, walk through the fire to come out the other side, because my experience and my belief, and I've held this for every client that I've worked with, and I'm sure that's similar for you, is that I know there's light on the other side, and I hold that.
Yes, thank you so much, Phyllis, because you read my thoughts, because I was about to add that it's only in the darkness that we can see the light. So it's only in our pain that we can find joy again,
Right.
Yeah.
It's really true. I think one of the biggest motivations for people to heal is pain. But what I would add to that, because I think it's also really important. So I think it's important to not feel ashamed of being in pain, not being ashamed of feeling like you don't know how to get out of it yourself. There's nothing shameful about asking for help and reaching out to other people, because that pain is actually the greatest motivator. It's also what brings people to the doctor, to heal their bodies. Yes. But the other thing I want to add to that is that, to the extent that we can heal, and it's never perfect for anybody, where it's a 2 steps forward, 1 step back sometimes process, or 10 steps forward, 1 step back, because we are imperfect human beings and there's always more learning to do. But to the extent that we can heal, we don't repeat what happened to us. And so we're safer people for other people. We become better parents. We become better partners. We become better bosses and colleagues, to the extent that we can heal. So we can all be a part of breaking this cycle of the worst that hurts people.
Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you for sharing all these very powerful words. And healing is so important, like you are emphasizing. And it's because when we heal ourselves, we can help others to heal.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if we are
You
hurt,
don't have to be a therapist to do that. You don't. It's great to be a therapist. It's a wonderful profession, but you can be a better friend. You can be a more loving, better boundaried parent. You can be a more loving partner. You can be someone who is able to navigate conflict better. We can all be that for other people.
yes, thank you so much for sharing that. And you mentioned of some of the modalities that help you to heal on your journey. Would you please share with us what are some of these modalities and which one you think was more impactful in helping towards your healing journey?
I think the most impactful, well, there were a couple of things that were the most impactful, but one of the most impactful was doing, I guess I would call it guided visualization.
Mm-hmm.
Inner child combined with inner child work. I needed a safe way to go back and find what had happened to the little girl in me, and find her and heal her, help her heal, because she's the one, our inner child is the one who internalized these negative messages about herself, that she wasn't lovable, that she wasn't worthy, that there was something wrong with her, and that she should be quiet and hide in order to feel safe. So I think that guided visualization, some of it was hypnosis, but it was not like I was in a trance and didn't remember. It was more like guided visualization, hypnosis, and inner child work. Those were probably the two biggest things. And then I did just a lot of really just examining how what had happened to me was influencing the way that not only that I thought and felt about myself and other people, but how I was coping. Like, what were my coping mechanisms? Because so often, and again, I know that you must know this from the work that you do, the ways that we come up with to cope with pain or alienation or fear or anger as a child don't usually work well when we're adults. And so those whole coping mechanisms need to be reworked. One of my big ones was to isolate. That certainly doesn't work because we all want love and connection. That's what we're dying for. Love and connection, a feeling of
Absolutely.
belonging, a
Yes.
feeling like we matter, a feeling like we're okay, and that we actually have value. So I really had to learn how to come out of isolation and have a voice. And that was a really huge part of my healing. And I think it helped me write the books that I've written.
I think you touch on a very important point on losing that connection with ourselves and feeling disconnected. That's what trauma does.
That's right.
The system, without unconsciously, without us being aware of it. And I did that as well as a child. I disconnected with myself. I isolated myself. I suppressed my voice with the fear that if I speak up, I'll be scolded. It's a lot of these being suppressed emotions and those disconnection. And there are still people going through that. I meet people recently who are telling me that they feel disconnected with
Absolutely.
their spirituality, with themselves. And what one practical tip you can give to them today, suggest to them that they can do to start to build that connection back to themselves?
I think there's many, but one of the ones that really worked for me, it doesn't work for everyone, but it may work for
Yes.
more people than we imagine, Someone had shared with me a long time ago that there was a journaling process she had done where, sometimes journaling is just stream of consciousness, and that's great too. Just getting it out of your system, getting it on paper. Sometimes that offers a new perspective. But there was a specific journaling technique that I learned that was even more helpful than that. And that was to write down, let's just say, I'm depressed today, or I don't know what to do about blah, blah with so and so, whatever your immediate concern is. And then just take a moment and ask your highest self to answer your question or your need. And then just write as if your highest self is speaking to you, because we actually all have that. And most of us have not learned that from our families of origin or our culture, that we actually have the guidance we need within ourselves if we can get through the layers of conditioning and messaging that we've gotten, sometimes very negative messaging, and access our own wisdom. And that's something that people really lose connection with, especially if they've been hurt as children or even as adults, because it's not safe to access that part of you. You have to be on the lookout to how you're going to survive in a hostile environment or an unpredictable environment. So, and I did that once, and I couldn't believe how different my journaling became once I did that. And that became a practice for me that was really helpful. And if I can throw in a couple of other things, journaling's not for everyone.
Yes.
Wherever you do find connection, whether it's with your children or in nature or with animals or art or service, wherever your heart opens, wherever you have some feeling of worth or value, or your self-expression really is free to come out, go there and pursue that, because that also feeds that connection to our essential self.
Thank you so much for sharing these amazing tips, because I can relate to what you said. For me, I couldn't journal. It didn't work for me. It's like, though I teach a lot and I am in the writing area in academia, but for me it wasn't helping. And other point that you mentioned that helped me was going into nature. Just walking and breathing and just appreciating every moment and just being in that gratitude, Nature was very, very healing for me. Even when I was a child, now I am thinking back what you said, even as a child, I used to love spending time in the garden, looking at the flowers, and that has helped me to heal as part of that journey. That one of the technique that I use along so many other, we need to go deeper as well and look at that inner child. But I think that's it. Everybody has to see what works for them, what is it that they like. It's not forcing them because you and I, we are doing this, but it's about trying different things and just being open and see what makes your heart happy if you do that.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. And for me, nature was one of the biggest, besides writing, nature was one of the biggest. And sometimes in nature, I would experience a connection to love that I had never actually had with people.
Yeah, that is so true. Because Mother Nature is always giving to us.
Right.
And never taking back anything from us. So generous, so loving, and so kind to us.
So true.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Phyllis. It's so eye-opening talking to you, and because you have that deep understanding, you are in that field, you understand trauma, and this is going to really help the audience to understand themselves and to understand their where they need to start on their journey. And my other question to you is, you've encountered, I'm sure you've been a great reader, you've encountered impactful books in your life. And if you could please highlight a few books that have profoundly influenced you and briefly explain to us why.
These are, a couple of them are older books, but early on, I read some books about the connection between the victim in us and the perpetrator in us. And those books were amazing. Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't think of the author's name. Let me see if I can think of a more, I've read Brene Brown. She's
Mhm.
fabulous. And there was one of the very earliest books I read, which may seem dated, but actually isn't, was called The Drama of the Gifted Child. I don't know if you read that, but
Oh, I know.
it's way back in the day. And again, I just cannot remember the author's name. It was called The Drama of the Gifted Child. And it really outlined, and I think the subtitle was something like How Narcissistic Parents Form and Deform the Emotional Lives of Their Talented Children or their gifted children,
Mm.
something like that. Um, and it really was the effects of narcissism, which we're suffering so deeply from today, in our homes, in our culture, in our social media, in our politics. And so it's really not dated. And one of the things that that book talked about was that depression and grandiosity are two sides of the same coin, which we don't often understand. That when people are grandiose and extremely narcissistic, there's a deep wound
Yeah.
under that fuels that.
Mm.
And so, what I'll say, without necessarily going into more about the book, is that the relevance of that today, which I really talk about a lot in my book, is that we have to look for the wound inside the perpetrator, or we will never break the cycle that we're in.
Yeah, that is so true. When you said to look at the wound, because now when I meet those kind of people, it I reflect back and I try to think what is how what age what child what child age are they behaving and acting, you
Exactly.
know
Exactly.
yeah.
And in really good therapy, sometimes we just go for that. How old were you when you first felt that way? And then
Yes.
we get there, right? I was 4, and that's when my father died, or that's when, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
and,
Exactly.
and every person who is experiencing some wound, and I've been asking that question as well to some, not to the narcissist, but to the people around them. And they told me, yes, I know that person, something happened to them at 4, at 3. And I say, this is where the age where they got stuck. So they didn't know how to process their emotions.
And they didn't have help to do it.
They didn't.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
when I was writing my book, I looked up a little bit of the history of the Uvalde shooter.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I read when I was researching about him was that when he was in first grade, he was identified by his teacher as a great kid. And
Mhm.
by the time he was in third grade, he was already in trouble because he had a speech defect. He was being bullied.
Yeah.
Um, and there is where his pain began. There was pain in his family,
Mhm.
and none of it ever got addressed or healed. And he just became more and more symptomatic until he was completely disconnected from his own humanity and filled with rage. And these are so things that are so important for us to know. There aren't just bad people out there. There are hurting people out there.
Yeah.
And our job as a society, as families, and as a society and as America is to try to curb that hurt and help families and intervene before it's too late.
Yes, absolutely. We are here to help each other, to live as a community, and not to compete with each other. That's not the aim.
Exactly.
Yeah. And can you share with us a bit more about your book, your latest book, Phyllis?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, in basically the heart of my book was seeing that having worked with so many families, and even if I was working with an individual adult, we're still working with their family conditioning. How did their parents behave? How did they deal with conflict? What was rewarded? What was punished? What was expected? How were women treated differently than men if they were? All of those things. And so, what I saw was that dysfunctional family dynamics, and especially abusive family dynamics, where one person could molest someone or beat them or kick them out of the house or just say horrible things to them and put them down. Um, those same dynamics are happening on a national level, and they're really happening on an international level. So I took the lens of family health and ill health. What are the characteristics of a healthy family? Their love, a sense of belonging, their healthy boundaries, they're valuing each other, they're tolerating our differences, and there's a commitment to peaceful conflict resolution without harming anyone. These are some of the values and some of the characteristics of a healthy family. And the opposite are discrimination and hatred and conflict, dealing with conflict through repression or violence or shame and blame. It's targeting certain members of the family for abuse while others might be treated well. It's withholding resources. And these are all the things that are happening in this country to many, many thousands, if not millions of people who are being blamed and shamed for the ills of the whole country. There's also, one of the big ones is, in a dysfunctional family, it's not safe to tell the truth. It's not safe to speak up and say, that hurt me, or I don't want this, or, I need something that you're not giving me. And we have the same dynamics going on in America, where it's not safe for many people to speak up and say, don't kill me because I'm Black, or don't assault me because I have a short skirt on, or whatever it is. And so I took the lens of healthy and unhealthy families and I applied it to America for two reasons. One, to really look at, not for the sake of blame, but sort of like a diagnosis. This is what's ailing us. And then the second half of the book is all of the principles and the tools that I've learned as a psychotherapist that could be applied to a country to help us heal. What are peaceful conflict resolution skills? What does a commitment to nonviolence mean when we disagree? How do we learn to tolerate our own distress when we don't get our way or someone doesn't agree with us? Because these are the skills we actually need in our leadership. We need a commitment to nonviolent conflict resolution. And the bottom line of all of that, and there's probably more than one bottom line, but one bottom line of all of that, in the best therapy, is that I take responsibility for myself.
Yes.
I stop pointing the finger at you and I take responsibility. Where am I coming from? What's my agenda? Am I listening to you? Am I listening to you the way I want you to listen to me? Do I talk to you the way I want you to talk to me? Am I willing to own my mistakes and take responsibility for them the way I want you to do? Am I willing to compromise? Am I willing to make agreements? In my heart, am I willing to let down, and move through whatever's in the way and really try to reconnect with you and reestablish a relationship? Because these are the things we want in our own lives.
Yeah.
And so the same things that we want in our individual lives that are healthy for people and create a life that's meaningful and safe and rewarding for people and relational are the same things that would heal our country.
Yes, absolutely. That's so true. Thank you so much for sharing this part of your book, this for summarizing your book,
It was a summary, right?
Yeah, because there's so much more to the book that I would really, really recommend people. I will need to get a copy too, because I think it's an amazing book that I can apply in my own life with my own students, Thank you.
I would love that. And, and I have a whole chapter that goes into detail. It's called, I forget the name of the chapter, but it's about how do we repair relationships? And it goes through some of the things that I just mentioned in detail.
Wow.
And for anybody who goes on my website, if you contact me or sign up for my newsletter, I have a free PDF that goes into even more detail about how to repair a relationship after conflict that you can definitely apply in your own life. And I just want to share these things because I feel like we need to change the dynamics from the top down, but also from the bottom up on the family level. Families in America and around the world are really hurting. really hurting, and people don't know how to resolve conflict and come back together. And some of the role models coming from the top down in our country are not about commitment to repair relationship. In fact, the commitment is to divide and conquer.
Yes,
Hurts everyone.
it does. It does. Yes. And the last question, we are coming towards the end, Phyllis. It's been such a pleasure, so enlightening talking to somebody who is in the field and who understands and who is helping others. So, can you share with us? You are welcome. Beside the books that you've written, what are your other projects or initiatives that you are currently working on? And how can people stay updated and get in touch with you?
Yeah. I mean, basically, besides my book and promoting my book, which, by the way, just got formally released yesterday, that was my launch day, although it's been available for quite a while for pre-order, but you can get it, the book now, is really speaking, like on podcasts and in any venue that I can have, write articles, do other kinds of interviews, and just try to reach as many people as possible with some of the most, what I think are the most important elements that could help us get back on some kind of humane track in our country and in our world, because I really think we're in danger. Just like a family that's abusive to its own family members, if nobody stops them and nobody tries to heal what generated that abuse or neglect in the first place, it's just going to repeat and escalate. And I think that's what's happening here in America and around the world. And it's cause for great concern. At the same time, I 100% believe that people are totally good. And if we can access the good and the untouched, innocent part of ourselves and others, we have a chance to heal on a much wider level. And so my other big project really is just speaking right at the moment.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much. And I do wish you the very best with your speaking, and congratulations for your book.
Thank you.
And
And
for
please
the
contact me at www.phyllisleavitt.com. I'm on YouTube. I'm on, all the social media, Facebook, LinkedIn. I have lots of articles on Substack, and I welcome anyone trying to connect with me on just contact me through my website. And I'm really happy to speak with anyone and engage further. So thank you. Thank you.
Oh, it's been wonderful talking to you, Phyllis, for you sharing your insights, your knowledge, your wisdom, your own journey. I think it's been very enlightening for the audience and for me. So I want to say big thank you to you.
And big thank you to you, because it's been just as wonderful talking to you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. And I would like to say big thank you to the audience for watching, sharing, and subscribing. And we'll see you all very soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.